Hey folks, this week we'll give you our recent plays of Habitats and Call to Adventure Epic Origins. Then we'll give you some advice on Viticulture, and we'll finish up with our main course and Nick Oben's Play One Game a Day Challenge. Stick around.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
That's right, we are the Beans and Dice podcast. I'm Mitchell.
And I'm Wayne.
And we are going to get into what we've been playing, a recap of some of our recent plays. So, Wayne, what you been playing?
So last weekend, I got to play a game, Habitats, from 2016. BGG rating of 7.3, which is actually surprising me. A little spoiler for what I think of the game. Weight is 2.24 out of 5. Designer is Korn Van Morzel. This is a game that I think has been re-implemented by Nova Luna and a couple other games. And it's sort of a tile placement game where there's a main board where you're moving sort of your meeple, your pawn around this main board, and you're collecting habitats. You're then transferring those habitats to your main sort of wildlife park. And as you build that out, you have to have certain animals in certain order to score points. And so it's really just a movement game, and then building out your tableau, building out your habitat. So it's a fairly light game. The weight of 2.24 seems a bit accurate. It could be a little bit less than that, I think. Even it's definitely a fast play game. It's like a 35 to 45 minute long game. But it didn't hit for me at all. Like I know that we played the game. There's 3 or 4 of us playing it, and one person really liked the game. They brought it, and they were a little dejected that I was very sour on it, and that the other players were like meh. And I think part of it is that main board. There's certain like movement rules for your main character. You move it around a certain area, and I think if you're on one side of that main board and you need water habitats, or you need habitats for a certain creature, and the only ones out currently are on the other side of the board, it takes you several turns to get over there. And if you happen to get behind another player and they're moving in the same direction to you, they're sucking up all the tiles that you're hoping to get to. So I felt like the entire game I was either chasing my tail or chasing other players to get across this main board. And maybe I was just missing how to do that more efficiently, or maybe you give up on that, or maybe you have to really quickly give up on your current strategy and start building out different habitats. But it didn't really hit. And I think for the lightness of the game and the quickness of gameplay, to get behind and just constantly be behind was rough. And so granted, it was a short playtime. If this game was an hour and a half long, I would have been like, I'm not finishing this game. We're going to move on from it. But the fact that it was a quick game, I'm like, all right, I'll just take my licks and move on from it. But it definitely, in the realm of a try, buy, and deny, I think this is a deny. It didn't do anything for me. I think there's a lot of other games out there. I mean, Barren Park is a more complex. You're drafting the tiles to fill out your park. There's a bunch of games out there where you're sort of building out a park using tiles to do so. This isn't a polyomino game. The tiles basically are all sort of the same shape. You're just trying to match them up, where you have to have like a certain amount of water tiles next to each other, or a certain amount of savanna tiles near each other. And if you get that, then this animal scores and things like that. But it just didn't hit at all. So, it's always fun to play a new game, give it a try. I think I was interested in playing this one because it was a lighter game that played quick. And I'm kind of always looking for that with my family and my kid and stuff like that. But I just don't think this is a game that they're going to get into. So
I got to ask about the components. Is it like little porcelain animal figures? Like, what are those made out of?
no, I think those are upgrades. The one we had, it didn't have those little porcelain things. It was definitely more like just little meeples. I think that, like, we're looking through BGG and the photos on BGG, people definitely have sort of upgraded those, or maybe that was a Kickstarter thing. But really, it was the only meeple we had was just your one little like meeple with a hat on it that you ran around the tiles. And it just was weird because you had to like, I didn't quite understand, because if you were looking for, the first couple tiles I got, I needed water tiles. In that main middle sort of game area, the only water was on the far end. And as I started heading there, someone else came and got in front of me and sucked up all the water tiles. Okay, well then, now I'm back on that side of the board. Water tiles started showing up again, back on the other side of the board. So now we go all the way back across the board. And I said, well, screw it. I'm not going to do water tiles. I'm going to go and try to do this Savannah thing. So I started looking for Savannah tiles, and then basically I just started running in circles trying to get Savannah tiles. So it just didn't hit. And I think some of the symbology was, like they had like leaves and like grass, and I kept easily confusing the leaves and grass for the different types of terrain, and I screwed that up a few times where I'm like I was going for one thing and didn't so it just didn't hit. It was a okay game, definitely something I wouldn't sort of recommend. Maybe try it, but for me it was definitely just not even interested in playing that again.
So a deny for you. It looks like we're going to be pessimist today because, spoiler alert, my game is also a deny. So I play Call to Adventure Epic Origins, which is, I guess you could call it an expansion, but I think it's really standalone. It's a campaign version of Call to Adventure. Just a brief overview of the base game. 2019 release from Asmodee, designed by Johnny O'Neill and Christopher O'Neill. It's a game that I think the base game is a try for me. I do own it. I really like the look of it, and I bought it, and I like it all right, but it's not my favorite. Basically, you're creating a character for D&D or any TTRPG, your backstory and class and things like that. And the way it works is there are different like act cards, like act 1, act 2, act 3, and you start off with certain runes that you can cast, and it's like throwing D2s essentially. We talked about this on the show a while back. And based on whether or not you get successes is whether or not you win the challenge on the card, which can give you more runes or cards or bonus points. And it's just a little repetitive for me. And there's always an option where like you can just get this card without casting the dice if you have certain runes, and it just seems like a cop out. So the base game is all right, but not my favorite. Well, what this legacy new release that came out this year on Kickstarter does is it makes it competitive. So it's got all the same components and mechanics as the base game, but there's kind of like a big bad that you're all fighting. And basically, the winner, whoever has the most points, only wins if the bad guy was defeated cooperatively. But if the bad guy is not defeated, then everybody loses. So for me, it felt like if I didn't think I was going to win, all I have to do is not do well fighting the bad guy. And instead of there being a winner and 3 losers, I would just say, oh, we all lost, womp womp. It created these weird situations. So like your hero and anti-hero cards, just like in the base game, you get a point for everyone you play. So you want to play those cards. But in this new version, a lot of these cards have to do with helping other players whenever they're fighting the big bad, which you fight 2/3 and then at the end of the game. And it's like, I'm playing these cards because I want to get the point, but at the same time, I'm helping someone get a blow on the big bad, which is going to give them points. But overall, it's going to make it more possible for me to win the game potentially, or to let somebody else win the game. So it's like, I feel like I wasn't incentivized enough to want to fight the guy. And it weirdly incentivized me to help other people whenever there's only one person that can win. One thing I did like is so there's this one result on the runes that if you get a certain symbol, you get to draw a card, and everybody got an asymmetric ability that you could, instead of drawing a card, do something else. That was kind of cool. There's some new types of cards where you can stack experience on them and they get better, which is a completely new mechanic. Usually experience is just points, or it lets you cast extra runes. So there were some cool new increases to it, but I feel like it didn't change it enough. And the changes it did make, for the most part, weren't that groundbreaking to me, and I would probably just prefer to play the base game. It's marketed kind of as a campaign, but from what we can tell after we open the second envelope, it's just a new bad guy and like a few extra cards to get added into the deck. So definitely a deny for me. Have you played the base game, Wayne?
I don't think so. No, it's definitely not, and the expansion would turn me off probably even more. I think I'm with Tom Vassell on this one. Is like that semi co-op that like you're trying to, like, there's one winner, and it doesn't do it for me, because like you said, I think that mechanism of, well, there's only gonna be one winner, so where's my incentive to actually do anything to help finish this game in a positive manner? Now, granted, part of that we've talked about, even the magic circle of, like, it's a community, we're all together, but even then, though, I think it just loses me. So I think the base game, I've kind of was maybe interested in giving it a shot, but based on what you're describing, the expansion, it's like I'm out.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It felt like a little bit like jumping the shark. Like it didn't need this at all. Now, I'm a huge fantasy fan in general, and they
Same.
have a reskin with Brandon Sanderson. They have an expansion with Patrick Rothfuss books. So that kind of stuff really, really intrigues me, and I like the direction they're going with that. But this one just seemed like we didn't really need that.
That's unfortunate because like you said, I'm also a fantasy person, so I would be into that kind of stuff, especially bringing in books that I've read, and it's interesting playing that. But yeah, it would be denied for me probably as well. So yeah, this is the pessimistic what we've been playing.
All right, folks, that was our What We've Been Playing segment, and now we're going to move on to Dice Advice, and we've got Rob jumping on here with us. We're going to be talking today about strategy tips on Viticulture. So Viticulture is a worker placement game by Jamie Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. Basically, there are different seasons where you can carry out different actions with an ultimate goal of making wine and selling it at market to buyers who have specific orders. So who wants to start off? What are you guys' overviews of strategy whenever you get to playing Viticulture?
So I guess I'll jump in first. I think my big thing is, well, one, there's a couple different strategies to play the game, right? There's the big, make the biggest, best wines, make kind of, just enough wine to get by, and then there's like never making any wine and only playing cards. And I think I can get the rationale on the only playing cards as a strategy. I despise it. I really hate that strategy. I like the theme of making wine, so I generally try to make wine. Yes, I try to make wine. So what I try to do is, one, in any kind of worker placement game, so Viticulture, Lords of Waterdeep, whatever, I try to get extra workers or get workers as quickly as possible. So I'm either going to choose the extra worker spot, or I'm going to try to get my extra workers as quickly as possible. That maxes out the number of actions you can take in a round. If I'm not getting the extra worker, I'm going for the extra victory point, or I want to go first because I don't want the spots getting blocked that I want to take. And then in general, I try to build enough of a wine production that I can get things going, but I don't try to overdo it. I'm not looking to make those, 9-point sparkling wines. I want to make wines in the 3 to 6 range, red and white, maybe some blush. And so generally I will do the first 2 cellars. I don't really try to do the third cellar till late in the game until I really need to make some bigger wines. And I generally always sell my big field because I want that the 7 lira right off the bat. So I'm looking to make some money right away, to buy a couple of upgrades, get some grapes going so that I can get a couple of points really quickly and just sort of build an engine of making wine and filling orders, but that's not a huge engine. I don't need to be making the huge wines because if I can get 3, 4, 5 points per turn earlier, usually you can get far enough ahead where it's hard to catch up to you at the end of the game. So that's generally my strategy for Viticulture.
For me, it's all about planning ahead in Viticulture, literally from turn 0, where you're picking the wake-up order. And forgive me, I'm much more familiar with Tuscany, which is the best way to play Viticulture. I'm not going to get to that debate. But it has 4 seasons instead of 2, like a real year. And so some of these may be a little bit different than base game. But from choosing the turn order, essentially, basically if you go earlier in the turn order, you get less benefits or less powerful benefits. And for me, it's always a give and take. So this may be self-explanatory or obvious, but it's like I'm going to go as late as possible without getting a benefit that I don't really need. Like one of them is age grapes. Well, if I don't have any grapes, then why do that? Or if I don't need my grapes to be aged, why do that? Or one of them may be, like get an extra card. But if I'm already at my hand limit, I'm just going to have to discard it. Well, let me go for something else, right? And then before I do anything, before I place my first worker, I plan out where all my workers are going to be for that whole year. A lot of people hate me because before taking my first turn, I have to think a lot. And because the way Viticulture works is once you decide you've moved on from a season, you can't go back and do those actions in the first season, so you have to think about it. And what I let drive my decisions are the orders, the purple cards. That's the big points where you have to get specific wines to sell to these people. I always try to start the game getting one of those whenever I'm choosing my mamas and papas, or with where my wake-up order is, and I let that define what I do. Usually it may be a couple of generations, a couple of years until you can make that first order, but that really informs what I'm doing because you're starting off with usually only 3 workers. Once I get to the point where I can fill an order, if I have planned out all the actions that I need for that season to get to the order, then my next priority is getting an extra worker, and then getting money. Usually I sell that big field too because I'm only usually working on 1 order at a time. I don't need 3 different fields worth of grapes. And then my next priority is seeing if I can get victory points here or there by, going on the spot that gives you a victory point or playing certain cards. whenever I get to the point where my engine is really running and I have all 6 of my workers, then that's the point where I can usually map it out to where I can have an order ready to fill without being out of workers, and I could start working on a second order at the same time. So that's whenever I'll start getting multiple purple cards at a time. But that's pretty much me. I'm order driven, and every year before I place a single worker, I know everything I would like to do if people don't screw me over.
I got to say, I agree with you, Mitchell, there with the purple cards and the orders. If I can get a couple of order cards early on, that's really going to kind of set up what I'm trying to do. And so if I'm able to get that with the mamas and the papas at the setup of the game, get a couple of those in hand, and then kind of build my engine towards trying to make those couple of wines, get a couple of those recurring incomes coming up early as possible, so I can get some of that income just coming automatically. I'll say I also agree with going as late in the order as I possibly can normally. This is a game I have found that going early, unless you really, really, really need to do something and you're playing with a good number of people, I've found that going early in the order isn't real beneficial, and I kind of let that dictate my strategy, for better or for worse. I think I'm fairly successful at playing this game, but I tend to kind of sit back a little bit, and if there's a couple of options on, I could do this or I could do that this turn, if I don't do one, I'll probably need to do the other, the next go around. But I tend to kind of go as late as I can to get some of those better benefits on the wake up turn track, and then kind of defer and kind of wait and see what other people do. But this is a game, a bit of a cop-out here as far as strategy talk. I don't usually come into this game with a big overall strategy. I tend to let the cards dictate what I do. I will agree with you guys that I do tend to sell one of my 2 biggest fields because you can just make a lot of money early, and especially if you have some of those grapes that require either the trellis or the, what's the other one, the
irrigation.
Oh, irrigation.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to say the water one. Yeah, yeah, the irrigation.
The whole thing is a vineyard.
Exactly. So if you've got, I've had games where I've had my my opening 2 or 3 grape cards have all required some kind of upgrade, and so I'll usually sell a field early so I can make some money. I can do that upgrade, and then also, as Wayne said, I try to save some money to get at least one additional worker pretty early with the first couple of rounds of the game. Again, depending on how many people you're playing with and how quick people jump on that, that's something that you may have to wait a round or 2. But as with most worker placement games where you acquire or you're able to acquire more workers as you go along, that tends to be something that's fairly important, is picking up that extra worker or extra couple workers early in the game. And then that just makes it exponentially as the game goes along. Having those extra actions every round over and over again really helps. But
yeah, the return on investment for workers in viticulture is probably one of the highest I see, because it's not that hard to get a worker. You pay $3 if you land on the bonus, and you're going to more than make up for that probably just within the next year of having one extra placement. And like you said, it exponentially increases as you get to 6 throughout however many seasons you end up playing.
Well, that's what I think. I differ from you guys. I mean, you guys are both on you take your purple cards, your order cards, and you build from there. So I don't care about those at the beginning, because I know that there's a whole lot of order cards that are red or white wines or of 3 to 6 value. There are a whole lot of cards that are, I need a 3 of red and a 3 of black, red, or 3 or 4, right? So they're all those combinations. So what I'm looking to do is build an engine that's going to give me at least one white that's a 3 or 4 and a red that's a 3 or 4 every turn. Because I know if I get those, I'll be able to either complete those orders as I draw them, or if it ages 1 or 2 turns, then I'll get the 6, the 6 red or the 6 white order. So that's why I tend to actually want to go earlier in the order in the beginning of the game, because I want those bonus spots. I want to get the extra $1 for giving a tour. I want to pay the extra $1 less for getting the worker. I want to be able to harvest both my fields, not one. I would be able to make 3 different wines. So I generally, in the beginning of the game, focus on going earlier in the order, giving up an extra card, right? Really, I think especially in the base game, the biggest part is the one that gives you the victory point. And I have done it where I've gone to that every spot, every turn, the whole time, and that can give you 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 extra victory points. But so I generally try to go early in the game to build my middle of the range engine and pumping out those cards. And then because later in the game, you guys have got a bunch of order cards. I can get to that. Again, if I get to that bonus spot, I get 2 order cards, which gives me more, variability in what I can complete. So I generally kind of focus on that.
I agree with you that those bonus spots can be powerful, and you want to kind of maximize those and do as many of those as possible. But again, for whatever reason in this game, I feel like I haven't felt. You usually don't feel the need to go first to jump on one of those spots. I guess if you're trying to maximize everything, that would work. But again, I've found just as much success kind of sitting back, waiting to see where somebody else goes, and then jumping on some of the spots that people aren't going to, and picking up those other bonuses. I don't know exactly, I guess, how to explain that, but I feel that this is a game that I tend to play better when I react a little bit to what other people are doing. But again, I'm going to say that overall the strategy in this game, I think, with Viticulture is very much based again on the cards that you get, because some of those visitor cards, I think they call them, can really swing. If you get a couple that kind of push you in one direction to building a certain kind of structure, or an advantage for doing something based on what your opponents have or don't have. I kind of like playing that game a little bit. I do make the wines, I do fill the orders, but I also mix in as many of those bonus cards as I can. And I was going to also mention that building is it the cottage? What's the one that allows you to draw one from each of the two different decks on the change of season?
The cottage in between.
Cottage.
Yeah, in between the two seasons, you get one extra card. That's a good one to build.
Okay.
Early.
Yeah, I was going to say if I've got the money to build an extra structure, that's one of the first. If I'm not having to build the structures for my grapes or for something else that I just absolutely need, that cottage is one that I try to jump on early in the game. And again, the earlier you can do it exponentially as we change those seasons over round after round after round of that game, being able to draw a card from two cards. I spread it out, one from each of the decks, but you can even double up on one of the two decks. But being able to get that extra card every change of the season, every round is really nice. So
I actually disagree with that, because the hand limit is so small in Viticulture. I almost always end up having to discard cards. So wasting those actions and those resources to get cards that I'm going to end up discarding. Now, of course, I get to pick of those cards. That's
I was going to say you get to pick. So yeah,
but it's not as much of a payoff to me. I mean, what I like to do, and it's different than what Wayne said, I like to build my irrigation and my trellis early on, and all my cellars. So whenever I get a purple card, no matter what it is, I know I can fill it, rather than building things in reaction to what those purple cards are. And I also want to clarify something I said earlier about wake-up order. I do see value in going early, but I don't necessarily feel like I have to be the first person, because rarely, I mean, it depends on player count, but rarely do you see that someone's going to go to all the spaces you want. And so as long as you can do most of your plan, a lot of times it'll work out. Don't get me wrong. There are some turns that if I miss one step in this thing of planting, harvesting, making wine, selling, building, it's just not going to work. Right.
Yep.
But most of the time, what I'm saying is I don't necessarily always want to be in the first or second slot to get those crummy benefits. Like on one, you get nothing. And the previous turn, you have to go dead last in order to go first. So I like middle of the pack, because I want to get some meaty, juicy thing on wake-up order without being last to pick spots. So I guess I'm more kind of in between you guys on wake-up order.
Yeah. Well, and it's you brought up a good point, too. It's like building all cellars. I will build my biggest cellar later in the game if I'm growing those bigger grapes. But to build it before I'm ready to start like making those sparkling wines at 8-9 value. Because if you think about the sparkling wine, it takes 3 grapes. Well, for those 3 grapes, I could probably do 1 or 2 other smaller orders that are 2, 3, 4 points. So if I do those earlier, in a round or whatever, I might be able to get that 5 or 6, or that 3, 4, 5 in that range, 3 to 5 points. Whereas if I take the time to build that cellar and build that huge, thing, maybe what I get 6 or 7. So, it really is. It's hard to do both of those, and I've always found that just cranking out those 3, 4, 5 pointers is a little faster than somebody who tries to do the big wines. Now that's I'll jump out and be up in the 20s, close to the end of the game, and then in the last 2 turns somebody does like 5 or 6, 5, and does like huge chunks. But you're playing a catch up game at that point. I always like to be a little bit of ahead, because I think, if I jump out there and I'm in say 14, 15 points and everyone else is still at 5 or 6, this puts a pressure on the other players to have to, oh my God, he's already ahead of us. We gotta push, to try to catch up. And then that usually either makes mistakes or gives other openings for me to take turns to get additional points. So that's just, and I've played kind of all those things, but I just like that little middle of the round strategy there.
Hey, interesting discussion with us having such wildly different, well, I won't say wildly different, but such, we've disagreed kind of on opposite ends on several of these points.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me excited that we need to get a game in, just the three of us. And,
and we've played a few games before, especially at
Yeah.
PGA, and it's, I mean, they've always been fairly competitive games. Now,
Yeah.
I've professed numerous times that I despise I'm never going to make a wine or put a grape in the ground, and I'm just going to play cards strategy.
Dan Erdzik. Yeah, Dan Erdzik.
What are you guys thoughts on that strategy?
I think I think it's possible. I don't think it's necessarily ideal. I don't think it's going to win most of the time. But if the game allows it, I'm okay for it to happen. I think what's a more viable path is more a combination of those two, which is kind of what I was getting at. What I focus on orders, but probably maybe a quarter of my points that I get at the end of the game are going to be in other ways. Points I can acquire on my stepping stones to filling those orders. And that's one of the things I really like about Viticulture, kind of on the same topic, is it's basically a race. I know if both people get to the finish line, it's who's higher, but it's not like I'm having to say, okay, does it make more sense to keep this money because they're worth points for every 3 of them at the end of the game, and these wines are worth 3 points in the game. I can use all my resources just to get as high a score as possible, and I think that's one of the reasons I like this game so much.
Okay, I probably don't need to say a whole lot about this topic. I mean, here we come. Here comes Rob, the anti-themer. But yeah, I mean, the theme of it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, it's a mechanism in the game. It's a path to get a bunch of points. So if somebody wants to do that, it doesn't bother me at all. And it's actually kind of fun to me, a little bit of a challenge. Say, hey, this person's trying to break the game. Let's see how far they can get, and let's see if I can shut that down. So yeah, I find it to be interesting. So
I mean, I will say I think the core mechanism of the game of planting grapes, harvesting them, turning them into the wine is fun. Trying to break that is I guess less fun to me. But if somebody does it, that's fine. That's your game. I'm going to play my game and fill these orders and be a winemaker.
Not going to bother me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think part of it is my wife and I are into wine, and we did our honeymoon in Napa Valleys, and we have friends that are sommeliers. So I'm into that world. So the theme, I think, hits more with me than maybe other people. So and I get the counter argument that I've heard several people say is, well, there are people who don't make grapes that are just resellers, or they buy grapes from other wineries and make their own grapes. And I get it, and that's why I'm not, I guess I'm super, I despise is probably too strong a word, but I like using strong words, but it just, I don't like it that we talk about it several times, that magic circle, and we're playing a game about winemaking and you're not making wine. It kind of for me, it breaks that circle, and so I generally don't like that. But again, if that's your play style and that's what you want to do, that's cool. I might not play Viticulture again with you, but
wow, strong words.
Yeah, I will. But that's the benefit is if in this particular game I don't like the way you play the game, so I'm going to move on and play it with somebody else, right? I think that's the benefit of having a good game group. You learn certain games you want to play with some people, certain games you just that's not the kind of game I want to play with that person because their play style doesn't mesh with this style of game. But I love playing this other game with them because of that style. So I think that's one thing you learn. But I think that there is now the question is Mitchell and I are more familiar with Tuscany, and I'll say that I've played probably equal amounts of regular Viticulture with Tuscany. And there's not too much of a difference in the play styles that I've seen, at least, between the two.
I'd agree. I enjoy Tuscany more, but yeah, I agree. They're basically the same mechanisms. There's difference in planning and the different.
You have
the
to
way
plan
you
out a
attack
little
it.
bit better, I think, in Tuscany because once you move from one season to the next, you're cutting off. Whereas instead, really, you're just making one choice of cutting seasons in regular Viticulture because you have all these actions in the one season and then you go the next season. So you have to plan a little bit better on which actions you want to take during your 4 seasons. But in general, the idea of what workers you build and what plant, if you're going to sell Tuscany or regular, I'm selling my 7 plot, right? I'm trying to get my extra workers. I'm trying to build, the first 2 sellers. That sort of stuff I don't think changes between the games.
One thing I wonder, I think we've all said we sell our 7th plot. I wonder if that's something that Jamie expected whenever he was designing the game, or if he just put it as an option. But if everybody does it, is it an error with the mechanics to not even do that?
I don't always. Yeah, I tend to sell one of the two bigger ones, but I've had games where I've planted in all three, and again, it kind of is dictated by the cards that I get and the strategy that I need to go for. If I'm needing to get combinations, if I get small numbers on my grapes and I need to end up getting higher grapes to turn into higher wines quickly, sometimes I'll keep that 7 because I can plug 3 or 4 different grape cards into there, and sometimes you just need to do that. So yeah, I kind of look to sell one of those fairly early, but again, it is a little bit, again, for me, dictated on how my hand plays out.
I would say the majority of my plays, I sell the 7, but I think there are some times where I sell the 6 instead of the 7. Here's an interesting question, though. Of all the plays that you can remember, have you ever sold a plot and then actually bought it back later in the game?
Nope.
I've one time I can remember I did. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember a single time where I ever bought back a plot that I had sold previously. Just
I mean,
seems so
about-
expensive.
I think it's important that mechanic's there in case you get backed into a corner, but I think it's very, very rare that it would be useful, just like uprooting a vine.
I was going to ask about uprooting a vine. Yeah, I've done that once or twice, but yeah, just to do it probably. But I actually, there was one game early on that I played that I was stuck where I needed to uproot a vine, and I ended up having to build the wagon or whatever it is to then uproot a vine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably in all my plays, I've probably rebought a plot once or twice and probably uprooted a vine once or twice. And there is a card where you get victory points for uprooting. I think I know I've done that a few times. Where I'm like, well, at the end of the game, I might as well uproot it. I don't need any more grapes, so I'm just going to uproot this and get a couple of victory points out of it. But yeah, it does. So there does seem to be some mechanisms, some actions that you very rarely would use in the game. Which, like you said, there's a reason for them to be there. They're just not used very often.
There's one that I feel like a lot of people sleep on that's actually really, really powerful, and that's the trade action for a 1 grape, which seems kind of useless. But if you're trying to make a sparkling and you already have really high-level grapes and you already can get to the 9, the only other requirement you need is a single grape, and like maybe you've already harvested your fields this season. That's an easy way to get a bunch of points if you're just missing that one requirement. I like to do that a lot whenever I'm in that situation, and a lot of people, I think, pass that up.
I would say all three of us are fairly decent at this game. You know, we all love it. We all play it, and we're not like, novices at it. But we all have some fairly different strategies as we play. So I think that's also speaks highly to the game that you can be successful at the game with multiple strategies.
Hey, folks, thanks for sticking with us. I'm Mitchell. I've got Carlos and Wayne with me. And we've got an extra special guest who is no stranger to those of you who have been around for some time. We've got Mr. Nick Oben. Thanks for being here with us today, Nick. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, Carlos, I believe you have an introductory question for Mr. Oben.
Oh, and I like to ask all my guests when they come on the show. Got it from one of my favorite podcasts, the D6 Generation. It's an awesome question. Are you now or have you ever been a gamer, Mr. Oben?
I believe I would qualify as a gamer. Yes, sir. Goes back, my modern obsession with tabletop gaming is actually fairly recent, but going back to my college days, there was a lot of poker. Actually, poker, traditional Texas Hold'em back when it was popular, was where I really kind of learned, let's sit at a table with some friends and play a game. And that was fun. That was a thing that became socially like what we would do. Then my good friend Mike at the time got me into this thing called Carcassonne. Tile laying game. Classic.
I think I've heard of that, maybe.
Yeah. And we
never played it.
We spammed Carcassonne heads up like a showdown every day, multiple times a day. The game would just be on the table. And what's funny at this time is, thinking back on it, I had no idea that there was a whole world of tabletop gaming. Like, we owned the game Carcassonne, period, done, end of story. Maybe he had like Life or Parcheesi also up in his room, right? We were all living together in college. It was like a dorm setup and whatnot. And maybe he had a few other games, but Carcassonne was it. It was Carcassonne and poker. And it wasn't until I graduated college, got a job, and then opened up a little bit, and we was like, there's this game called Twilight Imperium. Me and my buddies up in Maryland. Yeah, talk about a jump, right? It's funny. I don't remember there being a huge length of time where I did a lot of gaming between those two. Like, I started to learn that there was more to gaming than just Carcassonne and poker. We played Catan. I found Catan at some point, at some way, right? And Seasons was another one that was actually fairly early on. But yeah, what really got me into let's sit at a table and think and turn it into a puzzle and make sure everyone has fun. Some of the stuff, Carlos, we talked about before, was a group of 6 of us bought in together. Each spent $15 to buy a copy of Twilight TI3, right? TI3 at the time. And that actually says a lot right there. 6 of us pulled our money together because no one was going to spend $90 on a board game. Like no one in my group of friends.
That's ridiculous. Who in the world would ever spend $90 on a board game?
Yeah, it's fine. Now it's ridiculous. But so, and we're dating ourselves a little bit. I mean, TI3 was relatively new. It came out. My other friend Craig up in Maryland was like, "Hey, I think we should do this. It'd be a fun way to get together." And what we did it as then a social contract by buying it together. The 6 of us met up every month and played. So I got, over the course of the next several years, dozens of plays of TI3. And over those years was like, whoa, this is like what I like to do with my friends. I want to think, I want to solve problems, I want to be puzzling all the time. And then because TI3, what a weird like mainstay to be an intro. It's the game that people think about when it's like, oh God, you're crazy to play that. You spend all day. Yes, and it taught us to have fun with the play and to make sure that everyone had fun with the play. We had a couple of games where someone was basically out of the game 2 hours in, 2 or 3 hours in, right? That can happen in a game of TI. And it was noticeable. It changed the whole social hangout experience when one of the guys was like, oh man, it's not really that much fun for me anymore, and I'm stuck here for the next 6 hours or whatever. So it did kind of foster this. It's a social event, and we're all here to have fun. It's a competitive game, but it's a cooperative experience. I've talked about that before. That'll be one of actually a big thing that I talk about. We as adults who are busy and have other things to do have decided cooperatively to get together and spend our valuable time doing this activity. So it better be fun, right? Like that's why we're doing it. And yeah, I want to win, but I want us to have fun. That's the point. So it kind of thinking about, and when you ask the question, my background in gaming is as a social event that I kind of got deeper and deeper into and realized that this is a lens through which I can have friends and be with my friends and hang out with them. And that is the end. That's the means to that end is having that fun. So there you go.
I just got to say, knowing how hardcore of a gamer you are, how much you get into the nitty gritty of planning out and optimizing every move, it's just comical. It sounds like it's from a movie that your origin story was in Carcassonne, such a light game, thinky albeit, but such a light game. It's just comical almost.
Yeah. And again, we spammed it. It became, that was fun. I mean, I would look across the table. We treated it like heads up poker. We really did. Mike and I played a ton of heads up Texas Hold'em, which is a very different game than a 10 table game of Texas Hold'em, a 10 person table.
Yeah, because you're talking like 2004, 2005. It's right around that time. Texas Hold'em's on TV. Everybody's watching it. You know, everybody's playing it, buying the books. Yeah, I remember it was on ESPN. It was a good time to be alive.
That's right. So we played a lot of poker, and then we treated Carcassonne like that. I mean, it was this: where am I going to put this tile? How am I going to, be at advantage all the time? And it was very thinky. But no, you're right. Going from that to then TI3 was a bit of a jump. The one that I appreciated.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head where you talk about that social contract, and it's that game theory, game design. They talk about the magic circle that you create in a game group, and I think that's where sometimes you have that game group that plays TI or plays other highly competitive games, and they forget that social contract, and they so want to win a game for themselves that they'll sacrifice the fun for the group. So I appreciate you bringing that back, because I think it's important. And I think that's where we find communities that work well together. Your Wesley Chapel group, the Beans and Dice group, the Your Turn folks, the Armada folks, you have a lot of people that understand that concept. And if you're not having a good time with a game,
I met him.
Yeah,
I think that's how you mentioned Armada. I think that's how I met Nick. Is I hosted a demo of TI4 because I just bought TI4 and Nick showed up. I think that's how I met Muhammad as well. He showed up for that. And then Nick got introduced to our group, which the Magic Circle isn't as magical as his Maryland friends. And I still remember the day when he looked across the table and with stern eyes looked at Zeno and said, "Why are you attacking me?" And Zeno just looked him right in the eye because it's fun.
Well, and I'll point out, because I remember when I was learning Lost Runes of Arnak, Nick took the time, even though he was planning out his moves, he sees that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm missing a move that I could be making. And he took the time to say, hold on a second. Let's roll that back. Jump. Let's talk about this. Let me show you what you're missing here. And had nothing to, he still crushed me probably, but because it was the first couple times I'm playing, but that concept of being cognizant of the other players at the table and taking a moment and going, hey, you know what, you could have done this, better. You're first learning the game, or, you're missing this one rule where you're missing this move every round. You should think about, so I think that's a cool thing to do. And I think that's what makes it a warm, inviting environment, is when people are willing to do that.
Now, I do agree that Nick is inviting to games. However, I've heard Carlos describe that situation with Nick before, and I think there's a little bit of ulterior motive, because from turn one, Nick is going to predict the most optimal thing for you, him, and every other player to do and make his strategy accordingly. And if you err from that path, then it screws him up. So he's got to make you make your predictable wrong moves so that he can make the moves he wants to make to win.
Only the worst swordsman can beat the best swordsman because he can't predict his moves. Nick needs you to be at least mediocre so he can predict your moves.
Yeah, chaos.
Good call, Mitch. Good call.
And it's true. And actually, then Carlos, you called me out as being it. So in TI4 especially, or any of the TI games, where it's such this huge arc of a game, right? I can get a little managery, right? And I do have to watch out for that. No one likes the alpha gainer. It always comes from that place of like, oh, do you realize you can do this? Literally, like in a game like TI, maybe you don't even know you can do that or whatever, right? There's so much going on the board, something to be aware of. But Mitch is correct. If you go crazy and I don't know what you're going to do, it messes with my plan, because my plan is dependent on you doing something that does make sense. Now, I will say, Wayne and Carlos, as we've talked about this before as well, the place I am coming from, and it's the soundbite to take away, because this is what I teach my kids, and we'll get into the topic in a bit. But it's a competitive game. It's a cooperative experience. Period. I won't. Basically, there's no debate there. We decide to sit down at a table together, high five each other that we actually have time to play a game, right, for fun, and that's a cooperative experience, no matter how you slice it. If you were sitting down to do a puzzle together, for instance, and Mitchell's sitting there taking what is clearly a corner piece and trying to shove it with the palm of his hand down into somewhere where it just doesn't go, everyone at the table should look and be like, hey, Mitch, you okay? Like, do you need, that doesn't go there, right? It doesn't go there. So when I see folks in a competitive game that's still a cooperative experience struggle, clearly, like maybe they don't know the rules. They don't understand I need the arc of the game. I do like to jump in and be like, so you're going to need gold next turn. If you go here, you'll increase your gold income. Just want to make sure you see that, right? I mean, it's no big deal. Like if you don't, it will probably hurt you. But there's a lot of games I feel like folks struggle to see the arc. They struggle to see the importance of the tempo of the game, the timing of the game. You need to do this, otherwise you're not going to have fun 3 turns from now. And I always think back to that puzzle analogy of if I saw someone clearly kind of trying their darndest, but not quite getting there, I can't help but point it out and be like, I think it'll be more fun, first of all, if you do that over there.
Well, that's a good point, but also I think it takes an incredible amount of attention and an attention span that you utilize to. I feel like anytime I play a game with you, you know every other player's options and boards just as well as them, and I don't know how your brain can hold all of that and grok all of that, but more power to you. So, and I'm joking around about you trying to optimize based on us, but that's really a compliment more than anything. So, props to you for that.
Thank you, and I do.
Humble brag. Yeah.
Humble brag. So I think the main purpose of having you on tonight was to talk about this amazing thing we've been following you sort of all year, and we still got a couple of months to go, so we're not going to jinx you. But why don't you tell us what you've been doing all year, and then we'll I have a ton of questions. I know Carlos has got some, and I know Mitch. So let's why don't you introduce us to what you've been doing all year?
Absolutely. So without much forethought or planning, the boys, my two sons, ages now 9 and 11. When it started, they were ages 8 and 10. So it's fun to think about the scope. Got ourselves into playing a physical board game every day of the year. Come heck or high water, we are going to sit down, pull out physical components, and play a game. So how it started was January 1. We sat down and played a game because I was off of work. We had new games from Christmas, and we played a game because we're a board gaming family. It made perfect sense. We happened to play one on the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th as well. And that was got us through the weekend. I forget, I'd have to look at the calendar and see. But it got us through the weekend, and it was kind of like, oh, let's see if we can make it a whole week because it was fun. Little side on me, I like streaks. I like things that happen every day. I like planning. I like the routine. So when I saw it was I think when we made it 5 days in a row and we happened to have played a game every day, it was kind of like, oh, well, that's a streak. That's neat. Let's see if we can make it a week. Okay, just 2 more days. Easy. Let's see if we can make it 2 weeks. And then it became a little bit of a challenge. All right, we got to what game are we going to play tomorrow? Started becoming questions, right? And what are we going to do now? What do you want to play then? Then we saw if we could make it a month. After we made it a month, it then became, how long can we go? Maybe we'll go half a year. We jumped all the way to half a year at that point. And then probably by month 3 or 4, had officially said, yep, we're going for the year. We're going to do it. So it really was a slippery slope. It wasn't something we planned ahead of time. Just kind of found ourselves playing a game every day to start. And then once you got that streak, you want to keep it. So the rules of engagement, just to throw it out there, it's me and my 2 sons. However, and Wayne, we talked about this on the show a week or 2 ago. We don't need all 3 of us play a game together. The 3 of us will play a game at some point during the day. If I'm on travel for work, then I'll play a game without them and they'll play a game without me. But the 2 of them can play games together. They do chess or Onitama. Star Realms is another popular 2-player one they do. They do some heads-up games. But regardless, the 3 of us will pull out. It'll be a physical play. Solo play is okay, but only if you're actually alone, for the majority of the day, and it really just doesn't make sense. I'm the only one that's done a solo play. I've played Palm Island solo, and all year, here we are mid-September, I think I've only had to resort to that 3 times.
All right, I got a couple comments on that real quick. I have also played Palm Island solo in your jacuzzi.
Yeah.
And
Notice
actually,
he said
I played it solo with Robert while he was playing solo in the same hot tub.
I tried to help you not be kicking off.
We appreciate you, friend of the show. Secondly, I don't know, fellas, did y'all recognize that his boys were also on this journey? I didn't catch that the boys were they themselves actively playing their own game every day this year.
Yeah, I knew it was the family. I didn't know if it was. I knew it was you and the boys. I didn't know if it was you have a daughter and your wife. Obviously, I didn't know if they were involved in it as well. But it was good to see the 3 of you. And I think the comment I'll make real quick is that I love. It's interesting because I thought you had maybe planned this out ahead of time. The fact that it kind of grew organically, I think makes it even. It's probably better because you did baby steps. You did a week and then a month and then 2 months and then a half year and then a full year. I think going into it, if you had said on January 1, we're going to play a game every day for the entire year, it would have made it a more daunting task. So I think that's an interesting how you build the task and build upon it, built that repetition.
Yes, no, you're 100%. If we had set out as a New Year's resolution to play a game every day, it would have been a chore from day 1, or at least maybe much earlier, because it would have felt like this promise we made to ourselves, the big expectations that now we have to fulfill. Now, I will say it's gotten to that point now. We're 2 months and 10 days out, but who's counting? And it is kind of like this big expectation. We have to do it. It is something we have to do. I made sure to get a game in earlier today after school because we were recording this tonight, and I knew I wasn't going to have time tonight. So I was like, hey, we make sure we got to get it fitted in. And it was something we did just have to fit in. But yes, the first probably easy 3 to 4 months were almost free of any kind of that pressure because we hadn't actually said we were going to do it all year yet. So yeah, it was good. So yeah, that is the challenge. That is the thing that we are on, and there have been a lot of fun lessons along the way. As I was taking notes, getting ready for the show, one of those things actually was just reminding me of the scope, and with the boys, how they were 8 and 10 when we started, and now they're 9 and 11. And those are relatively small numbers compared to playing a game every day for a year. So like at the end of this, my 9-year-old will have played a board game more than 10% of the days of his life. And it's like what? That's crazy. So it is a big undertaking. It's a big scope thing.
I just got to say mad props. So I have kids 7 and 8, similar in age. And after school, I'm basically a taxi service. They have more extracurriculars than me: soccer, karate, dancing, piano, theater, all this stuff. How do you do it? I mean, I'm sure you guys have had to make sacrifices. What do you do whenever there's literally not a spare moment? How have you just coped with that on a day-to-day basis?
Great question. And the answer is, and this sounds crazy, but it is as simple as adding board game to the list of activities you just said, right? It is an extracurricular activity that we do as a family that has priority as if it were the baseball league we had signed up for them, or as if it were the swim lessons we have to take them to. You know, it's an extracurricular activity that we as a family have decided to prioritize. The nice thing there is it's on our own schedule, which you got to be careful because things on your own schedule can fall off it, but we just commit to it. You have to do it. And you treat it as non-optional because I signed up for this. It is where we are now. We're kind of jumping into this, like, that's by the time you hit month 6 or 7, that becomes that mindset. You can certainly set things up to your advantage. In the beginning, we did a lot of prepping the game the night before. It was a ritual for me. It became a bedtime ritual. I would set up the game that we were going to play tomorrow the night before. And it actually was nice separating the setup from the play, because then it would be very conducive for waking up in the morning. The game is ready to go. If it's a game that the three of us already know how to play, we literally sit down like before, after, or during breakfast and knock out the game. The game could even be an hour long. We still would have time for it. Kids get up. I get up before school. It's ready to go. We can clean it up. Or, we get the kids off to school, then I clean it up. Although we do have them clean up as much as possible. But eliminating the setup and the breakdown from the play was very instrumental early on, when I think sometimes those can be a daunting piece of that puzzle. I got to get the game off the shelf and set it up, and it'll be 20 minutes before we're even playing, and the kids are running over this way. Or like you said, we might only have 45 minutes before I have to take them to baseball, and there's not enough time. Doing the setup the night before, again, early on, was what made that work, for sure.
I'm sorry. The family that plays together stays together is what I got out of that.
I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. You say sometimes you play an hour-long game before school?
Yeah, so here in Florida, we don't actually care much about education. I don't know if you know. I mean, they don't leave.
You're in Pasco County, right, Nick?
I'm in Pasco County.
Well, no, I tell you what, though, sorry for interrupting, but I know Pasco County actually does it better because elementary school students don't start until later in the morning. They start at like 8 or 9 o'clock. In Hillsborough County, my kids at the bus stop at
9:30. Do they get off at 7 p.m.? What time do they get out of school?
3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 4. But that's actually better neurologically speaking. But in Hillsborough County, my kids at the bus stop at 6:50 a.m. So there's no board gaming before school.
Yeah, but then in theory you've got that afternoon slot. But then you're working, right? You're probably or whatever. So that's tricky. Yeah. No, the days where we can do it before school are great. It's almost, I swear, it feels like if you have some other daily habit that you do, or like if you ever belong to a gym and you feel like you got to get a workout in or do something every day, getting it done in the morning. I know. getting it done in the morning, and then cruising through the rest of your day, knowing that boom, it got checked off, is great. So we love the morning games if we can fit them in. It does require that rigor of waking up and deciding to do it in the morning. But yeah, our kids are not. They don't leave for school until 9. I think they leave at 9:15, 9:20, something like that. So there is plenty of time. They're up by 7.
So I have an 8-year-old. Mitchell's got a couple. I don't know the ages. Sorry, Mitchell. Carlos has got all ages. I'm a huge fan of various podcasts that talk about kids and gaming. And I think, my kid is of the age now where he's starting to find Fortnite and starting to find YouTube and video games and other stuff. He's playing soccer and all this stuff. How did you work past the sort of the hump of keeping them interested in the gaming? How do you get past the other distractions, or what sort of tips or tricks or things you've learned during this course of the year to keep young kids engaged in gaming on a regular basis?
Yeah, no, that's good. So there's a mix of strategies there. If it's fun, they'll like to do it despite the distractions. But don't get me wrong. I'll tell you what, 100% of the time, if I gave my kid an iPad playing YouTube with a Minecraft video on it and I held up a board game, he's grabbing that iPad, right? So some of it does become they are invested in the streak that we have. They know that we are doing it every day. And it is a habit now. And one of my notes here is the power of a habit and the power of that streak. Anything can become normal if you just get used to it being normal. So this notion that we're going to play a game today is reality. It is that is what we're going to do. So it's time to turn the screens off, hit pause on your video game. We're going to play our game now. We're going to play our board game now. And it resonates with them because of the habit, because at this point, 9.5 months in, they're invested too. Earlier on, when because even them just at ages 9 and 11, I mean, I think if you ask them, hey, do you want to finish this? They're going to be like, yeah, 9.5 months in, we got to finish this, right? So that now we can almost have it on autopilot. As long as there's no, knock on wood, act of nature or something that prevents us, we should be good to go from a, willpower to get it done. Early on, co-op games were the answer. Co-op games it was much easier to get them at the table when it felt like a co-op experience that was also a co-op game that we were probably going to win and have fun and everyone was going to be in a good mood. Marvel United, Castle Panic, just to name a two that come off the top of my head. We did a lot of those. The Crew, holy crap. The Crew has been the saving grace for this challenge easily 50 plus times. It was our game today. The Crew was our game today. And by the way, we're not talking about, you don't have to spend an hour for it to count, right? We are playing every day. So everything counts. One hand of the Crew is you broke out a game, physical components, sat at a table, played a game, right? A single hand of the Crew, not one trick, one run at a scenario, win or lose. We lost.
The real meta. Yeah. One trick tonight, that counts, boys.
No. There have been nights where it's like 9:15 p.m. and we're kind of like, what can we do that still feels like we're genuinely doing it? And
all right, kids, Rochambeau, let's go.
Yeah. Okay, actually, yeah. So we decided early on, rock paper scissors does not count. That's why I've mentioned the physical component. It's actually a thing that you got to go get and bring out and put it on a table. I
don't want to sidetrack us too much, but I got to ask. Trick-taking games to me have always had a level of complexity that's very deep. How do you get an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old to figure out? Are they figuring it out, or are they just playing cards?
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here. I love this topic. They are figuring it out. It is worth noting they literally have 200 plus plays of a game this year, right? So like they've got some plays under their belt. And I did, however, mention we have more than 50 plays. I know we have more than 50 plays of the Crew this year because we're on scenario 45 and we've lost plenty, right? We've lost. Now no, I don't think any scenario has taken us more than 3 or 4 tries. But just today, for instance, actually to dig in a little bit on the trick taking one, the nuance of knowing how important it is to throw away and trash the right card, right?
That's the hard part.
You lead green. I don't have any greens. Instead of just absentmindedly throwing some card away, it became very important at this level to throw away the right card because I don't want to be stuck with this winner. I don't want to win a trick with this card, right? That's why we lost tonight. One of the boys, oops on that. Landis had to win the green 6. Leo had an opportunity to dump the green 8. He didn't. And then it came down literally to last trick. And it was like, oh, Leo wins because he's got the 8. And oh well.
This is when you make him do push-ups and laps around the neighborhood.
Leo, come on, dude.
It's very bad. No, but no, yeah, it's so it's neat. They are playing at a fine level, I would say, though. I mean, we win more than we lose. We have made it to scenario 45, which is cool. And then they've got experience doing a number of other games as well. The co-op helps with that as well, too, especially early on, playing the co-op, keeping it fun. Sure, there was a little bit of that manager comes out, right? Castle Panic, we play open-handed. And so it's fairly easy to say, hey, Landis, make sure you go kill that orc or whatever. I see you can. You've got the swordsman, right? Go kill him. I will say that certainly had that lessened as the year went on. They are full-on gamers at this point for their age, not like they're prodigies, but they'll win. They'll win without me coaching, and it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the one of the first Wesley Chapel board game days I went to with you, I taught your boys. Oh my God, I'm gonna forget the name of the game now. It's the one where you're building the trek through the jungle. Rudiger Doring game, but the first game I taught it to him, and the second game, your older boy just crushed it out, like beat me and Rob and easily. So they learned quick. I mean, and I think that I could see right away like how many games they've played in a year, and sort of their level is higher than you would think for their age.
Cool.
So you're talking about you have over 50 plus plays of crew. I'm just curious. Or if you know offhand, statistically, how many unique titles you guys have played as a family? Do you know, or at least a roundabout figure out? You don't have to pull out BG stats or anything.
Well, I'm pulling out BG stats.
Of course you would.
I figured he would.
So
what's your H number?
I've got actually. So that's funny. That's a good question. Only 7 on the year is the H index. So that's 7 games played 7 times or more, right? And that is because there have been quite a few repeat plays. Individual games, I'm at 140. I'm at 146, and probably a lot of that is individual games. That's unique games, 146. A fair bit of that, easily half, is probably with the boys. Then there are days like there's game days, Dice Tower East, excuse me. I've had other game trips where maybe I've spammed games. So that's why I say maybe only half or 2/3 at most are with them. But we are sitting, I'm sitting at 378 plays total right now, logged with 146 unique games.
So what have you discovered, if you want to just have like a just like a lightning round of listing a few games that just work well as a family game?
Sure. So besides the crew, that's good. Let's do, so King Domino. King Domino is great. I'm cheating a little bit here and looking like, what do we play? Azul, fine, good. Galaxy Trucker we just did the other day. They had a good time with that. But then so the games that resonated really well with us are some of the heavier games, the ones that we spam. Oh, Aeon's End. Aeon's End is so good. Ask me how good it is.
How good is it?
It's so good. Thank you for asking. That checks all of the freaking boxes. It may be, out of this experience, the lesson relearned is how good that game is. It's a co-op for us.
I think you called in the show recently and talked about that. And then, yeah. I mean, the comments went wild about Aeon's End as soon as you brought it up.
It's just great. So it checks all of our boxes. Neat theme. Your wizards casting spells, again, trying to kill some monsters, right? So resonates with boys ages 8 to so whatever I am, right? And then you've got it's co-op, it's a deck builder, and it's extremely variable play. It's amazing, a lot of fun. So that's great. However, not super light, right? So here's the thing: if we're looking for the top 10 family weight games out of this, I'd have to dig in a little bit and find them, because we do, not every day by any means, but we do some of the middleweight games. Stone Age as a great worker placement game, right? But then we like Architects. Like we'll jump it up and do Architects of the West Kingdom. Viscounts of the West Kingdom. I set up a couple of other challenges for myself on the board game stats thing, and one of them is to play the 3 West Kingdom games, Viscounts, which actually, Mitchell, you taught me. Not at this past Dice Tower, but the one before it, I think.
I'm sorry, did you just say your 8-year-old plays Viscounts of the West Kingdom?
Yeah. He's 9 now. He's 9 now. You know,
right? So your 9-year-old plays Viscounts. Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, I mean, and
at 6 we started with brass. We figured we start light, kind of figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, that one. Don't get me wrong. That's close to the upper edge probably. But he does just fine with Architects for sure. Worker placement, I got it. Going to build some stuff. And then we haven't done Paladins. Paladins is I know the more complex ones. We haven't done that one. But we'll do. We picked up Barbarian Battlegrounds. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. Hidden dice placement. So that's kind of neat. You roll a dice. Everyone knows what your dice are, but they don't. But then you behind a shield, you assign the dice. So they don't know how you assign them, and it's got a little bit of attacking and defending, but also resource management and development. So that's really good. What else? Draftosaurus. Draftosaurus is great. Simultaneous play, things that are simultaneous play, so you can get them in quick and fun, and that's nice. It's got the 2 different side boards, so we do that. The Flux. Okay, so super lighter stuff. Marvel Flux. Dirty secret, I actively dislike this game, but we play.
This is why we're friends. This is why we are friends.
There you go. Like I see that as not a game, but an activity that checks the box, and they like it. The boys do like it. They like how zany it is, how it can be over in a minute because I changed the goal
or an hour,
Hulk or whatever. Yeah. And then making bacon, which is just a bacon skin of Yahtzee. So Yahtzee, basically. Dice chucker. Why not? It's fun. I got to figure out what to do there. Cuphead. So now you got me scrolling down my list. You'll have to stop me at some point because I'm only on August. Going backwards from September.
I did take lightning round, but
sorry. All right, we're done. What's funny? It's funny because let me finish on the Cuphead thing real quick.
No, I'm joking. Please talk as long as you want.
Cuphead is co-op. You're going to see a lot of my voice lights up a lot of these co-op games because I tell you what, these are where we found a lot of fun. Playing together, winning together, or losing together, but having fun. And Cuphead is tough. Cuphead's a good one. It's based on the video game and show by the same title. Dice chucker, but real time, timed rather. So you have 20 seconds and you set a timer and you start chucking dice. It's wild and zany and a lot of fun. Last one I'll mention because I've also brought it up on the show and it's fun. And we have had a lot of fun with this one is Arcana Rising. It was a Kickstarter recently. It's got a little bit of It's a Wonderful World vibe where you draft cards. Most of the game, you're taking turns drafting cards. And then you have to put those cards to work for you every turn. And it's similar to It's a Wonderful World with our dual use. You either add the card to your tableau, or like in It's a Wonderful World, you start construction, or you use the card to run your tableau, like as the input to it, and you can drive your engine. So that's been a lot of fun. Right.
So if off the topic, but if your kids are a fan of the show, next time they're at a game day together, let me show them a video. My college roommate's actually the voice of Mugman on the Cuphead show on Netflix. So
no way!
Wow, my kids would freak out too.
Yeah, my kid loves it. Yeah, I show him video. It's my college roommate. But so I want to bring up something. The other night when we were playing some games on BGA live, and you made a great comment that I'd love for you to talk about is we were trying to figure out like what game to play. Like we had finished playing The Crew, and Michelle joined us, and we're trying to figure out what game. And you made a comment that like, well, one thing I've learned over this course year is there's no perfect game. Let's just go. And so talk about that for a bit.
That's thank you for that. Checks in the mail. The line I've got in my notes here is not every game has to be the perfect play. It's mostly about playing a game together, right? And so when you play every day, by month 2, you figure it out that it's about playing a game together more so than it is about staring at your game shelf or looking through your library or searching your soul to find the perfect play, the perfect game that will bring you together in harmony and merriment and love. Like, no. If you find that, great. If you see something on your shelf and it's like, oh, that's it. Let's play that today. Everyone's in a mood. Let's play this. It's going to be great. Fine, that's good. And we had plenty of that. We would look at a Marvel United box, and it would do the whole spark joy thing, right? Whereas like you see it and you're just like, oh yeah, let's play that. But that didn't happen every day. But we played a game every day. So what did happen? What did happen is we looked at the shelf and said, this is a fun game. We know it is a fun game. I am now taking this game off the shelf and setting it up. Hey, kids, come on over, right? A little more methodical to it. But what's nice is that you just short circuit this pressure to pick out the right game. And then what happened every time is you'd be 5 minutes into playing a good game that you like, and you found out you were having fun, right? And you didn't put any thought into it. It didn't have to be the right game. It was a game that you have fun playing. And so that's been a big one.
It's that Netflix trap that you're trying to avoid. It's that Friday night,
yes,
and you're doom scrolling Netflix to try to find the perfect show to watch tonight. You finally come to an agreement on something, but then 20 minutes after the show starts, you fall asleep.
Right.
Because you've been up the whole time trying to find a show. So you got to short circuit that.
Like, how many times at a game day do we like, if we add up all the time wasted at game days, whether it be at your turn game day or West Chapel game day, or just your own personal game day at your house, where you're like heading around with your friends well, how about this game? Well, how about this game? Well, how about this game? And it's like Nick hit the nail on the head. It's like, just grab a game and go. Like you're wasting an hour, 40, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. And if you do that multiple times, that's a whole other game you could play that you just got to get past that. I love that. Like I'm taking that from your experiences here, Nick, is that when I go to game days, I'm not bringing 30 games anymore. I'm bringing like 4 games, and those are 4 games we're playing and done. Right.
Yeah. And the dirty little secret is you're going to have fun. Right. I mean, because they're going to be good games and you're going to have fun. It's great. Yeah. No,
so I know you're a hardcore gamer. Do you turn that off whenever you play with the kids, or do you just demolish them, or are they keeping up with you whenever it's not a cooperative game? Talk about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that here we are mid-September. You think I'd have a straight shot answer to that question. It really still depends on the game. I think I've gotten decent at taking my turns quicker. There have been moments. I mean, so far, by the way, everything in this interview has been coming up roses, and this is such a great experience. And it has been. We're going to finish, and it's great. Ask me again in December if I'm going to do this in 2023, right? But right now, my answer is no. No, I would not do this again. So, well, we can get to that in a second. Every game, I'm still kind of making sure that we're having fun. But we need to move the game along too. So I take my turns a little quicker without necessarily min-maxing everything I do. I try to urge them to do the same, because they'll actually sit there. Landis especially, he is my prodigy, I guess. He'll sit there, hand on his chin, thinking. And I'm like, okay, bud, what you thinking about? And he's like, trying to figure this out. I'm like, okay, well, just take a turn. So what I don't do to finally maybe kind of answer your question, I don't make mistakes on purpose. I don't throw games. No. I take valid plays. I take plays that make sense. I look at the board, assess the state quickly, and take valid plays that make sense to me at the time. I certainly do a little less of the, full planning out an entire round, which you alluded to earlier, and I do that. Normally when I take my turn, just to give you guys a little insight there, and why BGA actually is I enjoy it, is because no one can yell at me at the table for doing this. When I take my turn, I have tried to take the turn that everyone else at the table will take between my current turn and my next turn, in my head. Like, if I do this, what are they going to do? And is this still the right play in light of that? I don't do that when playing with the kids because there's no time for that, and we're just trying to get it done. And then I probably would win more often than I do. As it is, I can look it up. I win more often than they do, but not more often than they do combined, probably. It's probably something like 40, 30, 30. So in that general ballpark. And then there are games, this is another one, to keep it fun, to keep it interesting. If we played, I don't know, a very thinky game every time, I would win a higher percentage. But we also play games like King of Tokyo, right? And we play Cuphead. We play all the co-op stuff, but we play dice games. We play games that, hey, even Galaxy Trucker was very much a let's just build this ship and see what happens. Play games that lend themselves well to nerfing the fact that one of you is an adult and the other two are not.
You just got to get them into Can't Stop, and then you'll never win.
Oh my God. Can't roll 7 to save my life in that game. No, that's right. We did a game of Can't Stop because it's easy to simulate, right? That we should do more of that. I don't have an actual.
I know a guy that's made some boards.
You know a guy?
Pieces. Yeah, I got a guy.
All right.
Wayne knows a guy.
I know Joyce likes gaming. Maybe not as much as you, but I noticed she specifically said it's you and the two boys that have taken on this challenge. I know you've mentioned she plays with you guys when possible, but is she just not into it enough to take on the whole challenge every day thing, or how did that go?
Somebody's got to run the house.
Yeah, I mean, this is now back to your question about how do you fit it in. I mean, I Joyce gets full.
You fit it in by saying you can't play, you clean the house, and while we play.
Joyce gets full credit for supporting me and the boys in this endeavor. For sure, there have been many days where someone has to do the dishes and someone else has to go play a board game with the boys. And I'm doing the board game challenge with the boys. And so.
Oh, no. It's so hard.
I know. And so, yeah, I mean, there's certainly a little bit of the logistics. And when the rubber meets the road, we don't have time for everyone to abandon what they're doing every day, even for short games. But then a piece of it also is going back to how it started. It just so happened me and the boys played that first day and the second and the third. That wasn't done on purpose. Joyce happened to not play in any of those starting games. So it kind of started out organically. It was just me and the boys. I think we had gotten a new game or two.
Purposely kept her out on January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
That's right.
It was all part of the plan.
Boys only club. She'll join in whenever possible. Some games that like Draftosaurus with the simultaneous play do very well. We'll do real lighter games. My daughter will get involved. Again, didn't mean it to be a boys versus girls thing, but it is the 3 boys doing the challenge. And Lindsay though is just fine to be left out. We actually offer for her to play whenever. Oh, Silver and Gold. That's a good one. That's going back to your lightning round. Silver and Gold is another really good one. She'll play Silver and Gold. She'll play Illusion. The color matching.
That's a good one. That is a very good one. I'd love taking that one to the restaurants and bars.
Yep. So she'll do those. If we're playing a game where she already knows it and can jump in, she'll happily do so. But she doesn't have that now. What has become the pressure of completing the streak, right? So she has no problem whatsoever saying, "Nah, it's okay. I'm good. Thanks. I'll sit this one out."
So with the pressure of getting a game in every day, how often are you learning new games or teaching new games to the boys? Is it more of a, hey, let's bang out something we already know to get this over with thing? Or are you guys still exploring a little bit?
That's really good. I've tried to keep it for my own personal goals and sanity. Weekends when we have longer, I will commit to pulling a game that we haven't played ever off the shelf, shelf of shame game, or one that is heavier, that requires more attention, that we don't play often, right? During the week, life does happen, and we will tend to spam the same probably half a dozen. I mean, it's a pretty tight set at this point. Games that we know we can get in, 15 to 30 minutes. Let's just play. We're talking the King Domino, the Silver and Gold, King of Tokyo, Draftosaurus, all those, Crew for sure. Weekends is where we pull out bigger games. And then, yes, I will learn the game first. And then if there's a good YouTube video, I'll normally learn the game the way I would learn any game. Start by watching Rodney's video on YouTube. If there's one, or if not, then one of the other videos out there. And then certainly peruse the rule book, make sure I feel like I got it. And then if the video was good, that then also is a nice little thing. The boys don't mind watching a YouTube video, 20-minute long YouTube video to learn a game. That's a more collaborative way to learn the game. Actually, we all watch it together, like during breakfast or eating a snack or whatever it is. And I can pause the video to make sure they're following along, make sure they got it. So we'll learn the game that way, where the learning becomes a separate activity. We talked about the setup being a separate activity. We will watch a YouTube video to learn to play the game on Thursday and play that game on Saturday, because it does require that kind of planning and forethought. If you're going to integrate a new game that might take half an hour to learn and an hour or an hour and a half to play, we had really good success. Tidal Blaze was actually one I was going to mention earlier. Tidal Blaze we played, I think, 3 days in a row, because once we had that game set up, we enjoyed it and didn't want to put it away. But that was a big one. That was a 2-hour play, I think, all 3 times. We started to get a little tighter, but we flipped the board over, and actually there's a longer version of it that we did on that 3rd time. So that was good. But yeah, teaching the game, playing new games throughout this year was important, and we continue to do it. I have a brand new game set up on our table right now for this. I had that game set up, actually, I'll admit failure. I had set it up to maybe play it on Sunday. We ran out of time. We didn't play it on Sunday. So now it's still set up, and we're going to have to learn it and play it this weekend, I guess. Kleos is that one, Kleos. It was a small run Kickstarter done by an independent publisher.
Let's talk about some of the opportunities or weaknesses in what you've been doing. You shared some moments here with games you haven't been able to really get to the table. But I feel like one of the weaknesses I identified is you're missing a whole genre of 2-player games, like great 2-player games, because you've created this group, this party of 3.
Correct.
What other weaknesses have you identified in setting up this plan? Things that you felt you could have done better or different?
So something that we definitely could have done better that I'm surprised we didn't do, and in fact it hasn't come up at all yet, and it's going to be shocking to bring it up, is other than the Crew, which kind of counts as a little bit of a mini campaign, we didn't do a campaign game. Like, why didn't I teach the boys Gloomhaven or Jaws of the Lion? Or why didn't I teach them?
That would have been awesome. Go through Gloomhaven in a year, man.
Yeah, I know. What a loss. I mean, it's one of those things where this is one where not planning to do it until a few months in maybe cost me a little, although there was still plenty of time. It occurred to me.
We still got plenty of time.
Yeah,
I've got a barely cracked open copy of Hero Quest here.
There you go.
If you want to introduce the kids to classic dungeon crawling and run through some quick adventures that are campaign set up, take it home, Poppy.
Or a legacy game for kids like Zombie Kids Evolution.
Yeah, actually, the one I wanted to do, I have on my shelf. Maybe this conversation will be what gets me off my butt, and maybe we'll do it. We have Machikoro Legacy. I've heard that's a nice family weight legacy game to introduce them to the legacy mechanic. We also have Clank Legacy. I've got I actually have Aeon's End Legacy.
Mice and Mystics, Stuffed Fables. I think Rob borrowed my Stuffed Fables, but I've got Mice and Mystics here in the library.
Yep.
There are plenty of campaign games that are available you can get done within this year.
Yeah, we've enjoyed Mice and Mystics. We've enjoyed Stuffed Fables with my son, and then, like I said, Zombie Kids Evolution is 50, 60 plays, and most games take 15, 20 minutes max.
Cool. Oh, really? That's short. It's
a short game, and it gets harder. Like the first 10 or 15 games, you'll get done in 15 minutes each, and then it just gets faster and faster as you go. But yeah.
I hear, isn't My City good for that? Is that the one? My City is like half-hour plays or something.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
So you've already sort of talked about December 31st this year, you're going to celebrate, pop that bottle of champagne and be woohoo, done. Not saying that you're going to do another challenge, but have you thought about what you're going to do next year to keep that interest alive with the boys and with the family?
Yeah. So the piece that I have, a great question. The piece that I, as a gamer, want to continue to do, and now I am being greedy. It's me, and I'm dragging the boys along, and anyone else, and Joyce and Lindsay that want to come along, is that on the weekend, let's do a little bit of a bigger game and make it an event. Like let's agree that on Saturday afternoon we're going to spend 2 or 3 hours playing a game as a family, and it's like once a week. I'm not even committing to necessarily doing it every single weekend, but that part right now is the thing that I still do look forward to, because it is the least chore-like and the most getting back to that thing I love about gaming. Let's learn a little bit crunchier of a game. Let's play something that's going to be a memorable experience, as opposed to a lot of times on a Wednesday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, you got an hour between school and baseball. What can we play, right? Not what do we get to play? Oh, yay, we're going to play a game, but not like what can we fit in? That is the part that has turned it into a bit of a chore during the week, because, like Mitch alluded to, families are busy, we're busy. It's still fun, and it's rewarding in the way that getting something done off your to-do list is rewarding. But the weekend plays where we play a bigger game because we have time, because we meant to play that bigger game, because we got excited about learning that new game that we've been seeing on the shelf. All of those pieces I want to keep on going and carry forward.
It's been an inspiration. I mean, I think I'm gonna not necessarily come up with a challenge for my kid, but I know that I need to get back to. I've gotten out of the habit of playing games with my son as often as I did during the pandemic, and now that he's in school and doing piano and doing soccer and all these other things, it's very easy for me to just be like, forget it, it's too much trouble. But I think what I'm taking from it is, one, there is no perfect game, and oftentimes we'll hang out 15, 20 minutes with my son trying to figure out what game we're going to play, and 2, setting up ahead of time. Like, I think I'm just going to grab a game off the shelf, set it up so that when he comes home from school, it's already there. It's like, hey, buddy, let's play this game real quick before you go out and play with your friends, before you go get on YouTube or whatever. Let's just play something. So I think, it's been a bit of an inspiration, and it's given me some ideas on how I can work gaming back in more regularly with my kid.
Just to add wind to that sails and encourage you to do that, having a game set up on a table, you can't help your kid and adults alike can't help but notice the table presence, and it looks fun. It looks like a toy to kids, right? Because it's a game, right? And
you must not have cats.
Yeah.
He's got goats and sheep and chickens and turkeys, and he's got a whole farm to take care of.
Yeah, we have one indoor cat.
It's crazy. They have a whole farm out there where they're doing all that farm work and still having time for games, man. It blows my mind.
Yeah, but that setup ahead of time, Wayne, is great. And that will be one of those things. I think the kid walks by and the game is set up and it looks fun. So now it's not even like a battle to get him to sit down. It's great. It's great.
This conversation has inspired me. If y'all folks had an opportunity to watch the video as we're recording, because we're on a video chat for this recording, I've probably been distracted the last 5 minutes rummaging through my shelves, because as we're talking about different games, I'm reminded of, man, I want to play this game with my kid. Oh, I got to get back to the zombie evolution, the zombie kids evolution. And it has been an inspiration. I think I felt like I've been having so much fun playing games with my wife, just me and her, that I've neglected playing games with my son. Like, I've really been enjoying getting into these 2-player games. So I'm going to use this inspiration to get him back to the table, instead of letting him just kind of sneak off to the YouTube lands and the video game lands. I can't even name them that he does. I'm going to pull him into the table like Nick does and not make it an option.
This has been a lot of fun. It's been actually neat for me to reflect back on the last 9.5 months. We still have 2.5 left. But it has been certainly a big experience that I have really enjoyed, and learned a lot about what I do and do not like in this hobby. And it's all been mostly good stuff, which is great. And I appreciate all the time you guys have afforded me to sit and talk about it. It's been fun.
Awesome, folks. Well, before we go, I just want to remind everybody about the call-in show. Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. We host a board game call-in show on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. where you can call in and take over and tell us what you've been playing and things like that. Our podcasts drop every Sunday anywhere you can get streaming audio stuff, Spotify, all those fun places. And yeah, let us know how you'd like the interview with Nick. Maybe you can demand to have him back, and maybe we'll have him on a little bit more regularly. I think that'd be more fun. So on behalf of Carlos, Wayne, Nick, and myself, Mitchell, we are the Beans and Dice Podcast, the podcast about
How we game.
I was like, is it gonna be delayed? We're gonna do it. We did it. Okay.
It's how we do.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.